It's a real pleasure to welcome you today to this virtual open day. As Siobhan has explained, we'll have a chance to tell you a bit about why we think the STEaPP MPA is so special and why we'd love to have you join us. And then there'll be a bit of time for you to ask any questions you have about the programme and about the department. The department I head is Science, Technology, Engineering and Public Policy. I suspect you all know that. And let me just start today's session by saying a little bit about why I think STEaPP is unique and why I think it's worth you really considering us as an option when you're thinking about doing further study. So I joined STEaPP about 3 years ago, and I was attracted by many things to the department. But one of the things that really intrigued me and made STEaPP stand out from other science, technology, innovation policy units in the UK was that STEaPP is in an engineering department. It's in an engineering faculty. And that is unique in the UK. We're the only science, technology, innovation department in an engineering faculty. That's really important to us because it signals an intention both to consider all aspects of science, technology, innovation, and engineering is a key component of what it takes to implement successful technology and innovation policy in particular, and we think it should be brought to the fore of STI policy in a way that it isn't at the moment. It also implies a commitment that we absolutely have to looking not only to give you a learning experience that provides a really solid understanding of the concepts, the frameworks, the theory of STI policy, but gives you the chance to think about how you can change for the better STI policy and how you can enact what you're learning in the classroom to really make a difference. So in that sense, we're transdisciplinary. And we're dedicated to applying expertise, gaining that understanding and applying that understanding to change the world and to make our worlds better. We have an emphasis in the programme on real-world challenges and enabling you to engage with real-world challenges. We have a group project, which is optional, but most students choose to do our group project, which allows you to work with a real-world client to work on a research project that's meaningful to them, and to have that experience of enacting what you've learned in the classroom, applying it to real world challenges. So that's the group project, and we have other opportunities built in during the year for you to apply what you're learning in the classroom and gain that experience of trying to make a difference in the world. We're a global network, really. We operate with in partnerships with many universities across the world and many policy stakeholders across the world. You will gain from that. We will through what we teach and through inviting people into classrooms to give you guest lectures and participate in seminars. Will draw on that global network, and you will gain the benefit of that global network. Just before I leave, I'll say that we have a staff in STEaPP who are absolutely committed to teaching and who put enormous time and effort into creating really great teaching and learning environments. And they are researchers as well, and you will learn from what they know in terms of the concepts and the theories, but also from the research that they're engaged with, which is diverse and spans a great deal of different fields connected to STI policy. So I'm going to leave it there and hand back to Julius Mugwagwa, who's going to take you through the next part of the session. Julius.
Thank you very much, Professor Chataway, for the welcome and the overview on our department and the MPA program. So just to echo and to extend my welcome as well to applicants, prospective applicants, and also colleagues from the department for this moment when we are talking about the Masters in Public Admin program offered by STEaPP. So we are living in a pandemic, different stages of it. And I think among the many lessons that we learned from the pandemic is the need to rethink the way we make decisions, the actions we take, and also how fragile society is, and the need for agile systems to really help us to navigate. And that has not only come through in the pandemic, but even in other periods as well, you know, the different challenges that are faced by society the world over. And we know that in that nexus, or in that endeavor to make decisions and to take action, tools from science, technology, and engineering are prominent. And again, their importance couldn't have been made more clear than what we are seeing now during the pandemic. So it is that pervasive and integrative nature of tools from science, technology, and engineering that as a department we draw inspiration from for the MPA programs that we run. So we've got those programs that are displayed there. You could come in and do our flagship general MPA in science, engineering, and public policy, or you could specialize in development, digital technologies, energy technology, sustainable infrastructures, or urban innovation. So I'm not going to go into the details on that because colleagues are going to come in and shed more light on that. But we do those different MPAs and anchoring on some of the aspects that Professor Chataway was mentioning around the transdisciplinarity and being embedded in the real world, tackling societal challenges, and also drawing on our global network. So what will you study? That will be a key question for you, and I'm sure you've managed to establish some of the things that you will study. But in a nutshell, you will go through 5 core modules during the course of the study, the 1-year program. So you'll do 3 core modules in term 1, then 2 core modules in term 2. And then alongside that, you also do your specialist route modules. It's the general route or development, digital, urban, infrastructures, or energy. So you'll do that in both terms 1 and 2. And then in term 2, you'll have 1 elective module to choose from. And you also begin to work on your group project or the individual project, if that's the option you'll have chosen. Again, more details will come through as we continue in this session. Then for the electives, just a quick indication of the electives that we have, which you are very free to choose from depending on the career path you want to take, and also how we want to align the different options with your root module. So there's an elective on clean energy and development, which maybe if you are doing the energy MPA, you may want to have that as your elective. Risk assessment and governance, it goes with most of the MPAs really. Gender and tech, again, with most of the MPAs. Health innovation and public policy, again, you can have that with any of the other MPAs. Science funding and governance. Then the root modules or the MPAs themselves are also available as electives to the other candidates that are not taking those routes. So that's the other way that you can actually have different combinations in term 2. So for the group project, which Professor Chataway highlighted, and I talked about that briefly, where you get an opportunity to work on a real world challenge with a client or with a partner organization. This is really our very unique sort of offering for this MPA, in terms of that for some programs, maybe you do an individual dissertation, or something similar to that. But for us, the group project is really one of the flagship and the unique offerings that we have. And we have had a number of partners over the years. You know, the range of partners we work with continues to grow. And the ones that are put up there are just some of the partners that we are working with currently, or that we have worked with in the last few years. So you'll have that opportunity to work with 3, 4, or maybe 5 other students in a group where from beginning of the year, like around January, February until September, you will engage in a process of really fine-tuning what you're going to research on, in conversations with the client, and then deploying different concepts from the MPA to tackle that challenge. Again, we can go into detail on that, and you are free to post your questions on that if you need clarification. But there's also an option to do an individual project if that's your choice, or the route you want to take, depending on your career pathway. You can do an individual project, again, aligned to some of the clients that we have, or any other interests that you can bring on board as well. So what is it like to study at STEaPP? Let me at this point invite Denise, who is one of our current students on the digital MPA. So over to you, Denise.
Thank you, Julius. Can you hear me well? Yeah, okay. Well, hi everyone. My name is Denise. I am from Ecuador and Peru. And as Julius mentioned, I'm in the digital and technologies route of the MPA. Before coming to UCL, I studied international development and sociology. So I have a social sciences background, and I worked for 6 years in NGOs in India, in Peru, and in Canada at the intersections of gender, human rights, and technology. And I decided to apply to the program in 2020 because, among other reasons, I think during the pandemic, it became really clear that policymakers, at least in the Latin American context, were really struggling to adapt to the changes and the possible harms that were being brought about by digital tech. And my professional goal was to learn the skills and the tools that one needs to provide effective, evidence-based advice to policymakers, mostly to prevent or to protect vulnerable communities. So I decided to apply to STEaPP because based on my research at the time, I think it's one of the few, if not the only programs where you can simultaneously explore what are some of the challenges of public policy in a very specific context of science, technology, and engineering, and also explore, in the case of my route, the very specific emerging issues in digital tech. And I could do both at the same time. So I could really kind of make sure that everything I learned about public policy, I could apply in digital tech issues. And I didn't have to take 2 different programs to do that, which was my professional goal at the time. And I've been in the program for 4 months now. I think that it has genuinely exceeded my expectations, not only in terms of how much I'm learning, but in terms of how much it's challenging me, because I think a lot of the issues that I wanted to learn about, I'm learning to see from very different perspectives. The content or the way that the MPA is designed, I think it strikes a very good balance between giving you foundational knowledge about public policy and public administration. And if you're new to that, like it was my case, I think it's an amazing program for that. You really get the foundations, you get the basics. But if you already have some experience on that, like some of my colleagues, you can just go deeper and ask, I guess, more profound questions in class. But if it's new for you, it's also a great program for that. And when you take your the classes that are specific to your route, you can also go deeper on the topics that you came into the program for. So for example, I've been able to explore issues about cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, privacy and data protection, online harms, and so on. Just kind of the whole spectrum of emerging issues in digital tech. And what is great is that you get to kind of look at these issues, but also think about what are some of the challenges faced by policymakers regarding regulation, regarding legislation around these issues. So as I mentioned before, you get to do both at the same time. And on top of the content, I think that what I'm appreciating the most of my experience is that you really have an amazing support network. For my cohort, as a program, I think it's 50 of us, but in our own in the digital tech cohort, it's 16 of us, and it's very international. We have people from all over the world, people who have worked in government, in the private sector, in NGOs, and they're all amazing people that I get to learn from every day. We get to exchange a lot of experiences, not only in the professional sense, but what has personally been complex for us in this field. And professors are also part of that support network. You get to engage with professionals that are doing cutting edge research, in my case, around digital technologies and how to regulate it and how to protect communities from online harm. But the teaching team is also incredibly kind, and they're very generous with their time and with their knowledge. And I've had the opportunity to go on a Zoom call for 20 minutes with many of my professors, just kind of talking about my career and my goals and what I want to get out of the program. And they're really supporting me in helping me to achieve my career goals. And an example of that is that I shared with one of the professors that I wanted to go deeper on cybersecurity, and I was mentored along with other peers to join to enter a competition called Cyber 912, where you compete with other universities in solving policy challenges related to high-stakes cyber incidents. So I had never thought about doing something like that. With the advice and the orientation I've been giving in the program, I've been able to access those opportunities as well. So you get to do a lot in the classroom, but also outside of the classroom, and you get an amazing support network in the process. So I think that's it for now, but I will also stay for the Q&A. If you have any other questions about student life or just any other aspects of my experience, I'll stick around.
Thank you very much, Denise. Thank you very much. And Denise and all of us are part of the global community that we are proud to represent as STEaPP. We are really a microcosm of what UCL is all about. It's a global university located in London. I'm sure you know about our pedigree as a university, where we sit in rankings and all that, but we are really proud about so many things about us. Most importantly, how we are global, not just in the student body, but in the faculty as well. So the map there just shows where some of our candidates currently and in the past have come from. All the continents really have supplied students to us, and we continue to expand and to grow in the representation of where students come from, and also the disciplines that students are coming from. We've got engineers, we've got lawyers, we've got accountants, people from the natural sciences. So it's really a good mix of candidates and faculty as we bring our heads together to try and address societal challenges, but also harness opportunities that are there coming from science, technology, and engineering. So let me invite my colleagues now to tell us a bit more about the different MPAs, starting with Dr. Sarah Louise-Quinnell, who's going to talk to us about the STEaPP MPA, Science, Engineering, and Public Policy. Over to you, Sarah. Or is that you, Adam?
Yeah, hi. Yeah, Sarah unfortunately has been waylaid by the internet. So technology has got the better of her, but so I'm going to do a little stand-in cameo on this for her, and not least because as an associate professor of engineering policy, it's one of the places that you'll see me pop up in the program. But anyway, so to keep it reasonably brief, at least. The science, engineering, public policy route is the equivalent, really, I suppose, of programs that look at science policy and technology policy, looking at both the policies for science. How do you set up science systems, the governance of science, which is the topic typically covered in around the second term, but also the role that science and engineering plays within policy. That is the kind of science advice, engineering advice as a topic, as something that I've been actively exploring, and the way in which different advisory systems within parliament, within government, can operate in order to get technical, scientific, broadly based expertise into the policy process. So I think that in the first term, what you tend to encounter is a range of different speakers who come in to talk about these different kinds of angles. And I'm, as I say, one of them, talking uniquely, I think, globally around the topic of engineering policy and engineering advice, and really teasing apart the ways in which different approaches to the science policy interface, as it's called, that kind of relationship between what we might call technical, scientific, academic, research spaces and sort of policy making spaces, and how they interact. And I think it's one of the kind of strategic strengths of the department that this route emphasizes. So it's a way in which you can explore a range of different sorts of topics in this area, and it obviously links into issues in digital, issues in development, issues in energy, climate, environment, sustainable infrastructures, and so forth. So it's a way of getting a kind of broad picture, as well as thinking more structurally around the relationship between science on one hand and public policy on the other. So hopefully that gives enough of an overview, and I can leave it to the, I suppose, the Q&A if people have specific questions on that. Is that all right for now, Julius?
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Adam. Thank you. So I'll jump in my wearing my hat now as the co-convener for the MPA in Development, Technology and Innovation Policy, where we really ask the questions around how technologies and innovations can lead to societal transformation, sustainability, and inclusion. It's a big set of questions that are relevant, not just in history, but in the present and also going into the future. The so what question, all the knowledge that's there, all the tools from science, technology, and engineering and innovation, what are they doing for society? So those are the questions we grapple with, and we anchor our inquiry, our conversations, and our critical thinking around the notion of innovation systems, whether it's the national innovation system or the regional or the sectoral or the global, really organizing or trying to interrogate how different actors come together, the incentives that motivate them to come together, and the kind of linkages that are there, and the capabilities that are important and necessary for technologies to be able to be useful for food security, for energy security, for health security, all the big questions that societies are grappling with. So we go beyond describing or explaining the concepts, but really critically examining them in different contexts. And candidates are a very important part of the learning journey for us through what we call conversations on innovation and development, or innovation and development in context. So you'll be able to look at a country of interest for you, which could be your country of origin, or a sector of interest for you, and you really look very closely at particular issues in that context and contribute to the learning, in addition to the readings that we'll be looking at and the lectures that we'll be doing and other case studies. And we all know, or we might know, that we are living in the era of sustainable development goals. So these are a very important lens for our thinking in the way we organize what we do. Candidates have gone on to do a lot of excellent things after our MPA, joining the UN system, working in national policy programs, in the private sector, in the not-for-profit sector, in academia. So it's really an open MPA in terms of where it can take you beyond the study. So again, we can engage in the Q&A for further details on this particular MPA. Let me invite now Dr. Irina Brass for the Digital Technologies and Policy MPA.
Hi, everyone. I hope that you can hear me okay and see me okay. So I'm Irina Brass. I'm an associate professor in the department. I specialize in the regulation of emerging technologies, especially digital and healthcare technologies. I lead the MPA in digital tech and policy. And just before I start, I want to say a huge thanks to Denise for introducing and speaking so passionately and also so kindly about the entire MPA and also the digital route. As Denise mentioned, we are quite a popular route. We are a truly international cohort within the digital technologies and policy specializations. We have students with a diversity of academic backgrounds, from the social sciences to more technical backgrounds, and increasingly with considerable and very valuable professional expertise that is being brought into the classroom and really absolutely enriches the learning experience for everyone. So in a nutshell, what is the name of the MPA in Digital Technologies and Policies? So together with my colleague, Dr. Leonie Tanser, who is a lecturer in international security and emerging technologies, our aim in the degree is to really critically engage with the way in which we govern current and emerging digital technologies. So here we talk about not just policies and regulations, but also interventions that come from industry. How do we change consumer behavior and consumer practices? So we take a very broad understanding of what we mean by the interaction between digital technologies and policy in this space, to include all the stakeholders that contribute to the governance of emerging digital technologies issues. This is, as you know, a very exciting area, because ultimately digital technologies underpin more or less every single aspect of our lives, from the way that we organize our social and economic activities. They increasingly underpin the critical infrastructures that support our the way that we interact with other services such as energy, transport, etc. And they are also being deployed in situations of crisis, as for instance, we have seen with track and trace systems during the pandemic. But of course, there are huge benefits when it comes to digital technologies and policies, but there are absolute challenges. And that's what we explore in this MPA, in digital technologies and policies, these trade-offs. How do we strike the right trade-off, the responsible way in which we benefit from digital technologies and policies, but we also curtail some of their very critical, sometimes actually quite incommensurable, difficult challenges and risks that they bring. And just to bring to your attention, some of these risks are risks to fundamental rights, such as the right to privacy. Digital technologies and systems and digital products, such as IoT devices, for instance, increasingly have a critical cybersecurity considerations, for instance, that don't just affect our data, but our physical safety. We see, for instance, how social media can facilitate direct communication, but also, yes, lead to the spread of misinformation and disinformation that can sometimes shake entire democratic processes that have been established for a very long time. So what we're trying to do in this degree is to really understand some of the technical challenges that we are facing and why it is that the digital technologies that we interact with manifest in the way that they manifest, roughly because they are all supported by this global infrastructure, which we call the internet, that is very much layered, and at the same time really uncover beyond sensationalist statements that have to do with bringing in a particular regulation, etc., etc. We've seen quite a lot of movement here to really uncover and understand what are the critical challenges to designing and delivering responsible digital technology policy. So we structure the digital tech and policy specialization, as was mentioned at the start. In the first term, you have a course that looks at the foundations in digital technology and policy, understanding some of the critical technical issues and also some of the critical policy considerations and governance considerations that they raise. And then in the second term, you come in and we really investigate, dig deeper into the emerging dilemmas that are specific to digital technologies policy. And of course, in the second term and also continuing to the end, you develop your group project or your individual project, and we very much encourage the group project for everyone to join the group project, because as you can see from the screen here on the right-hand side of the screen, we have some fantastic outputs from previous alums that have worked with some great organizations, our partner organizations, from the Open Rights Group to the BSI, which is the national standards body here in the UK, to a number of organizations, for instance, the Office for Artificial Intelligence this year and others, and produced these amazing reports that are really cutting edge research that is very valuable to some of the key players in this environment. And lastly, just before I conclude, I do want to raise awareness of the fact that the MPA in Digital Tech and Policy is very much integrated into the wider structure of the Digital Technologies and Policy Lab, which sits within our department, which is a very vibrant community of researchers. So what we try to do is we try to bring the research and to really instill research-led education into our program, which means that we try to bring our cutting-edge research, the research that we do on a day-to-day basis, into our educational practice and to have you experience some of the challenges that we face in this domain when it comes to designing digital technologies policy. So thank you very much, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Irina. Yes, please put the questions in the Q&A, and we will answer them there and also in plenary when we get a moment. Let me invite back Dr. Adam Cooper for the Energy, Technology and Public Policy MPA.
Hi there, everybody. Yeah, so the Energy, Technology and Public Policy MPA is a slightly different kind of beast compared to the other routes. And that's because what we've done uniquely is to team up with another part of UCL, namely the UCL Institute for Sustainable Resources and the Energy Institute over there, who run an MSc called Economics and Policy of Energy and Environment. And what this allows you to do is to get the best of the applied public policy skills training that you get on the MPA, together with the opportunity to do the group project with a partner, the networks and the style of learning that the MPA has. But some of the deep technical analytic learning that you get from the MSc in Economics and Policy of Energy and Environment, the EPE MSc over there. And what this allows you to do, obviously, is to connect with a whole separate cohort who are typically more on the MSc, the master's classic style of things, slightly more analytic in the kind of deep technical economic sense, and connect into that community as well. So you have a broader double network. This route has two pathways within it, depending on your interests. You can take an environmental economics pathway if you're that way inclined, if you have an economics degree, or if you have a sort of mathematics type background that's particularly suited to you. Or if you're trying to get into the energy sector, or you already have some energy policy background, you may want to pick up the more energy modeling and innovation pathway, which doesn't have any of the kind of specific requirements around economics or maths as a sort of pre-entry. And that allows you to understand strategic issues, the way in which energy systems are modeled, the way in which innovation tends to happen within the sector. And then with me as the kind of the STEaPP contact person for you working over there, you also get some of the benefits, I suppose, of my experience and expertise in this area, as I've previously worked as a civil servant in the UK Energy Ministry, and have a range of online, live projects with the UK's Energy Ministry and other actors, research actors in this area as well. So very much in the same way as the Digital Policy Lab, we also, I think all of the teams here at STEaPP have live projects, live programs of research and deep and wide policy and applied networks that you can connect into when you do these programs. So this allows you to leverage the energy networks and the energy sector in order to connect into an either individual project which can be combined with academics over in the Energy Institute and the ISR, as well as potentially working alongside industry actors as well, such as we have this year with the IEA and other technology firms as well. So on this route, because of the interconnection with the other masters, the numbers are pretty limited there, so we can only take on up to 10 candidates on the MPA for this route. So if you're interested in that, please do get in touch. And if you want to explore the differences between the two, I'm very happy to answer questions on that, but look forward to answering any of your queries. Thanks.
Right, thank you very much, Adam. Thank you. Yes, let's put all the questions and comments in the chat. Let me invite now Dr. Jenny MacArthur for the MPA in Sustainable Infrastructures and Public Policy. Jenny.
Fantastic. Thank you, Julius. Hi, everyone. My name is Jenny MacArthur. I'm an associate professor at UCL STEaPP. I'm actually leading the route for sustainable infrastructures and also for urban infrastructure and policy. So I'm going to speak through one after the other to sort of round off our presentation. This first route on sustainable infrastructures and public policy, this looks at infrastructures in a more general sense. So we're not focused on just on transport or on energy or on water or wastewater, to give some examples, but we look at these sort of big questions about how the large scale networked infrastructures that really are sort of the basic support of society, how policy can be set to shape the way that they're designed and developed. This is a sector, when we look at infrastructure development, it typically or more traditionally has really been dominated by engineers and to a degree sort of economists or economic expertise. We recognise that there's a really key role for policymakers in this space at the moment. Some of the big reasons for that is that you've got these sort of large scale global trends towards urbanisation, which means there's a lot more people living in cities. And again, the question of how do you support urban growth or really support well-being and economic prosperity in cities with infrastructure is a big challenge at the moment. The other major issue that we grapple with quite a lot is climate change, which again really puts a huge challenge to the infrastructure sector. Just to kind of clarify here, we use the sort of qualifier of sustainable infrastructures as a way to highlight that actually a lot of the infrastructure systems and networks that have been put in place are not necessarily sustainable. In some instances, they've been put in place to extract environmental resources, and in other cases, they sort of lock us into consumption habits which are not sustainable, and particularly which are produce a lot of carbon emissions, which is a real challenge for climate change. So taking this broader approach, as it says on the slide, we try and shift our thinking about infrastructure as a support for society and really focus on the transitions that are required. So thinking beyond engineered solutions, which take a more sort of technocratic approach to saying, we provide certain networks and that leads to sort of social or environmental outcomes. We really advocate for a much more holistic perspective of infrastructure. In order to do this, we draw from quite a wide range of disciplines, and this is something that's really central to the specialization or this route, is that we draw from social sciences, we draw from literature about economics and the production of value, we draw from literature about politics and understanding the political dimensions of infrastructure development. Just one last thing to touch on is that a lot of the questions that come up with this route in particular are people saying, okay, I'm from a transport sector, or I'm really interested in water or energy. Is this a right fit for me? The short answer to that is that yes, we accommodate interests across different sectors. We make a point of teaching this route as a sort of a cross-sectoral kind of scope, because it's really come through in a lot of our research that there tends to be a lot of sort of silos or fragmentation across infrastructure sectors. And it's actually really helpful for our learning and for our thinking about how infrastructures transition if we have an understanding of how things are different actually across things like transport and digital and water and energy, and also to understand the interconnections between them. What we do to really accommodate where you have a specific interest, again, might be energy, or it might be decarbonising transport systems, or even if it's something quite targeted, it's really within your assessments for this module that you have the opportunity multiple times across both of the first and second term modules to use the assessments to do a real deep dive on the topic that you're interested in, and that really supports you again to have that more specialized focus. If you say, okay, I'm coming in, I'm interested in learning about these different sectors, but I've got a really specific kind of infrastructure challenge or a sector that I want to develop my skills in. That brings us to the end of sustainable infrastructures and public policy. The next module is on urban innovation and policy. This is a really enjoyable module. I've had a fantastic time teaching it so far this year. And the reason I say that is that the module really centers on a lot of the challenges that cities are facing. So everything from recovering to COVID to addressing issues around inequality, having adequate access to shelter, again, figuring out how you can make sure your public spaces are kind of democratic and inclusive. It really, again, centers on the key challenges that cities face, and the key focus in terms of your skill development or the competencies that you'll develop is figuring out how cities facilitate change. Now, at the center of this is the fact that cities have local governments or certain authorities put in place, that if we look at the sort of bigger picture or look back in history, if you ask the question of like, how do cities change, it's never solely just the government or just the local government. They do absolutely have a key role in guiding and facilitating that, but it actually almost always happens with sort of partnerships or coalitions across the public and the private and the third sector, and local actors and community actors have a really key role there. So we look at, again, how is change facilitated in cities? How do these different actors work together? What kind of collaborations do they form? What kind of experimentation and learning is required to address the challenges that we're grappling with at the moment? Again, it's actually similar to the sustainable infrastructures module. It's inherently interdisciplinary. And so particularly in the second term and in your assessments, you are actually assigned a specific discipline and asked to go and to do a literature review to explain how that discipline, whether it's economics or sociology or environmental science, how that understands the city. And we really recognize here that cities are not something, you can't say it's solely about economic kind of logics or rules that explain what happens in the city. It's not just about economics. That has a role, and the economic relations are important, but it also, like the ecosystems, natural ecosystems in cities are super important. The social relations, the political dimensions of it are very, very important. And we really ground our thinking with our urban thinking in an interdisciplinary context there to help you to grapple with, okay, what is the challenge here? And what are the methods and approaches that we can use to challenge them? I will leave it there for that module. Please, for either of the routes, feel free to put any questions in the chat if you'd like a bit more detail on what we cover in the modules.
Right, thank you very much, Jenny. So yeah, that's all we had, participants. We hope you have managed to pick up something that's useful for the decisions you want to make. And we've got a few moments for any questions, any clarifications. So I'm going to hand over to Siobhan. I know you've been keeping your eye on the Q&A tab, and there are some questions that Joy has been answering there, but maybe let me hand to you, Siobhan, so that you can lead us in this segment.
Thanks, Julius. Yes, so we've had quite a few questions through during this session. So perhaps some of them I could open back up to the route leads to get a bit more feedback from. So one of the questions we did have was around the opportunities that students have to meet and interact with representatives from UK government bodies. So Joe's mentioned about some of the guest lectures that we did, but I wondered if I could pass it back to you to just have some more depth on what we do offer.
Sorry, was that to me, Siobhan?
That is to all our route leads.
Okay.
Yeah, so I could go quickly, and then maybe Adam, Irina, Jenny, you can come in as well. Yes, that's one of the things we are really most proud about, being located in London, the heart of administration in the UK. So getting to meet, officials from different parts of the UK government is one of the things that we facilitate through lectures, and when it's feasible, through even visiting some of the institutions like Parliament, for example, and different government departments. So there is that opportunity through the different MPAs, and even through the core modules as well. And we have done that over the last few years. But let me invite colleagues maybe for more specific examples. Adam, if you are ready, then Irina and Jenny.
Sure, yeah, thank you, Julius. Yeah, no, I mean, as I'm sure colleagues will also reiterate, it's kind of one of the defining features almost of the experience on the MPA. So on the energy route, you will have lots of interactions with actors in UK government. So a lot of obviously my colleagues that I work with on a regular basis over at the UK's ministry, the Department of Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, but also regulator like Ofcom. We've done projects and visits with them. And then, of course, on the final project, the group project, or the individual project, just this year, we've got students working with the International Energy Agency. We've had work together with IRENA, the International Renewable Energy Agency as well. and just about almost every other major actor in the energy sector. We have either a network with, or we often arrange for them to come and talk to us in the classroom or in different kinds of settings. And historically, when you could go out and visit, even going into their offices as well. So I'll leave it there and hand over to Irina and Jenny.
Thanks, Adam. Yes, so in similar fashion to what was said beforehand, we try as much as possible to invite representatives, not just from government, but from key players in digital technologies and policy. So for instance, this year, my colleague, Dr. Leonie Tanz, invited the former founding individual, civil servant, who actually founded the National Cybersecurity Center, which is the sort of public-facing branch of GCHQ, so a major player when it comes to cybersecurity. Also, for instance, this year in the course that I lead, we have the Director of Trust for the Internet Society, again, a huge player on the international arena when it comes to internet governance related issues, when it comes to access pertaining issues to digital technologies and policies. But we also do a number of other types of activities that are quite unique in the digital tech and policy route that are linked to this. So for instance, again, my colleague, Dr. Leonie Tanz, in her first term, so she's teaching the specialized module in the first term, organized a sort of a hot desking career event where she invited a number of representatives from different backgrounds, so that are working in industry, in academia, in civil society, in government, with a regulator, Ofcom, for instance. And the students had an opportunity to very quickly, in 10 minutes, interact and kind of understand what it is to be working there. So there are different ways that we introduce not only the expertise in the route, not only the expertise that those practitioners bring in, but also the actual experience of how it is that they perform in their career when it comes to digital technologies policy and interacting there. So I'll leave it to that in terms of some of the unique opportunities in digital tech and policy.
I can just come in with just a quick note. I don't want to repeat anything that anyone else has said, although I definitely agree with it. There's a huge number of opportunities. Just one last thing to say is that STEaPP have a really interesting unit called the Policy Impact Unit. Again, it really reflects the department's commitment to understanding, engaging with policy, and being very doing a lot of focused work on actually what does it take to have impact on policy and recognizing the various routes to that. We have a really fantastic team there who work actually across the university with a lot of different academics, again, on that question of how do you achieve impact. We're really fortunate at STEaPP that they actually run a set of seminars called Get to Know the Policymakers, bringing in people from different parts of government, giving them an opportunity to talk about their work. And I think in particular, talking to people about things like, what's your career trajectory? How did you get to this role? What are the big issues that you're grappling with as an organization or in your particular part of government? And giving students the opportunity to engage with them. So that obviously will continue into the future. And that's, again, the sort of focus on impact and engaging with policy exists across the department, but the Policy Impact Unit do really interesting work in there, and it's worth keeping an eye on any of the events that they have posted.
Thank you very much, colleagues, for that. Yes, we do make the most of the people that are based here in the UK government, but this is very much a global MPA. So we draw from different parts of the world as well in terms of the policy actors, even private sector actors, civil society actors from different parts of the world to really inform our learning and our teaching as well. And yeah, so I just thought I should highlight that as well, that even in the literatures that we use and the conceptual frameworks that we use will really reflect that international aspect of the MPA. Back to you, Siobhan. Is there another question for us?
Great, thank you. So it was touched upon in the Root Leads presentations, but we've had a couple of questions around the kind of careers that our graduates go on to once they finish studying with us. So I was hoping we could open that up to the panel.
Yeah, again, just quickly, we will not be able to exhaust everything. You know, we've been running this. This will be our 8th or 9th intake, I think. So we've had already into hundreds of graduates that have come through our programs, but they've gone on to take up roles in different parts of the global economy, really, the private sector, the public sector, international agencies, civil society bodies. So I did highlight in one of my responses that one of our candidates, for example, is now with one of the largest global pharmaceutical companies doing stakeholder engagement there, having picked up, you know, all the learning that we do around systems thinking and others. So that's just one example. We've got others that are working in different parts of government, even here in the UK, somebody in the UN system, others that are working for technology startups and SMEs in different parts of the world as well. So yeah, we'll start with Jenny, just quickly, if you've got any examples, then Irina, then Adam.
Yeah, I can start. I think just sort of one thing to preface this with is that while the MPA focuses on public policy and public administration, something that's distinct that we really sort of emphasize in the teaching is that, again, public policy is not just something that governments do with everyone else sort of sitting back waiting to see what happens, but it actually involves a huge amount of collaboration and learning and innovation and knowledge sharing across those different sectors. So when we teach, we are absolutely cognizant of the fact that some of our students will go on to work for the government or for sort of state agencies or for things like regulators. But a lot of them too, with that very strong interest in policy, will be going to work for startups, recognizing that if you're a tech startup, you really need to engage with the government and understand how the policies are developed and how you can have an influence on that. Likewise, I mean, I can speak specifically from the infrastructure and from the urban modules. A lot of students, if they're really oriented towards change in those spheres, they might well go on to work for an NGO or a campaign focus group, doing a lot of kind of grassroots focused activities, but with very much with an eye to influencing policy. So I just sort of want to caveat that while we teach about public policy, it's definitely not the case that the only way to achieve change or to sort of work in that sphere is to work for, for the civil service or for a government agency. On my side, so from the sustainable infrastructures route, we have students work, again, across all of those three sectors. So some students have graduated and gone on to work for NGOs or, again, campaign groups at the urban level with a really strong focus on things like urban resilience and climate change and just transitions towards that. Also had students go to work for in the energy sector in particular, so looking at things like ESG ratings for energy finance and understanding how you get the sort of how sustainable finance can drive the transition, and also students go on to work for organisations like the energy regulator in the UK. One more thing to say, again, just from the routes that I've taught on, is that a lot of our students too come and study at STEaPP, and then if they've come from abroad, they go back to the country that they grew up in or that they've lived in and work for their governments there. So there's a really key part of sort of the knowledge exchange and using the STEaPP MPA to really kind of accelerate their career in that space.
Thanks. And just to add to Jenny's very, very useful comments, to say that also for the digital route, but also more generally for the MPA, what we have seen is that people don't necessarily, our alums don't necessarily go for those public policy careers, but actually in some cases go for quite a technically based careers. So for instance, in digital tech and policy, I can think of a few alums that are now working, that have joined the graduate scheme of quite large companies, for instance, IBM, and are involved in developing their cybersecurity solutions, so the solutions that these organizations when it comes to cybersecurity offer, or other alums in the digital tech and policy route that have essentially joined startups or joined SMEs, for instance, in fintech to establish and to develop their standards portfolio, so to ensure that those organizations are compliant with the standards that are required when it comes to the development of digital technologies and products in their specific domain and sector, such as finance here. Also, lastly, a very sort of surprising and beautifully surprising thing that we have seen is a lot of our alums are also considering starting their own businesses, their own SMEs or social enterprises. And some of them, a couple of them in the Digital Technologies and Policy Lab have also done that and have done so successfully and have actually bid for funding as part of, in one case, as part of their MPA project, bid from funding from UCL Innovation, and were able to use that to then set up their organizations, their own organizations. So we see a lot of diverse ways in which then our alums take the learning and the experience that they have developed through the MPA and then apply it in a quite creative way in their future career paths.
Thank you, everyone. Oh, sorry, Adam.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say that it's kind of broadly the same picture in the energy space as well historically. And it's probably just worth mentioning that many that come on the MPA across the different routes do so sort of from government jobs as well. So of course, many of them go back to their government jobs, but the benefit of that, if you're moving into, I mean, on my sector, you can go anywhere from like Shell through to the National Energy Ministry, through to small energy startups, just in the same as the other ones, is that you've got this network of alumni, and we have a live LinkedIn network of the alumni that you connect into and build the kinds of influence that you need. Just as Jenny was saying before around, influence doesn't happen in any one place. It can happen and start from any place really, and it's as much about how you use the knowledge and the networks that you have in order to get the changes that you think are important, and that's kind of what we're all about. So thanks.
Thanks, Adam.
Thank you very much. Over to you, Siobhan.
So I think we currently have one open question that Denise is typing her answer to, but perhaps it's something we could just open up a bit more generally as well. And that's just a question around the general workload on the MPA.
Yeah, just quickly, it will be a busy year for you. Lots of exciting things to learn, lots of exciting things to do as well. So I think that's all I can say. I mean, you are typically looking at 35 to 37-hour week. You are really a full-time student, and you have to do a lot of reading across the modules, and assessments will come thick and fast. Individual work, group work, and all that. So it's really a full-time MPA, 35, 37 hours of reading and then doing the things that you need to do for the MPA. But I think Denise is writing something, just really sharing the current experience that she's going through as a student. But Adam, maybe you want to just add something to that.
Yeah, I do. I mean, obviously we're super cognizant of the workloads, particularly with the remote learning that we've had over the previous years, which can make it a little bit more intense. But one of the things that I would say is about the nature of the kind of coursework that we do, and just to try and emphasize perhaps some of the distinction that we bring to it with regards to, in contrast, other kinds of master's degrees. Well, we're focusing on very much the kinds of products, the kinds of approaches, the styles of communication that you might encounter when, in professional settings. So in another module that I teach, the evidence for decision making, you're going through processes of communicating to senior types of officials or senior business leaders in order to get your point across in the appropriate way. So you're intersecting professional practice with the deep knowledge that you're getting. And it's not about, having exams in summer and so forth that you might get in other kinds of settings, or indeed those more kind of academic essays and those kinds of things. Although we do in places utilize approaches that are a bit more like that. So just, I thought it was worth mentioning.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Adam. And I know Joe Fitzsimons, our senior learning and teaching administrator, you've been attending to the questions there. Do you want to just give sort of a general comment on some of the questions you've attended to?
Sorry, I was typing away there at the same time. I'm not sure. They're really interesting questions, actually, but I think the panel have dealt with them really well so far.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Joe. Yes, there were questions around admission and whether if you apply early, it means you you are more likely to be considered. Of course, I mean, this is a very popular program and there's a huge demand. So the earlier you apply, the better. That's all I can say. And then all the other issues, I think they are being dealt with on the chat. And again, our email address is there. Please feel free to continue emailing us and asking all the questions. Anything you want to understand, please do write us. There is no question that is too small or too big. We'll really try to help you in any way we can so that you can make the right decision. But what I can assure you is that you will not have made a wrong decision if you decide to join us. You are seeing, I mean, one of the lessons from the pandemic is the central role of science, technology, and engineering. You could pretty much say the pandemic has been a big class on, I mean, a big global class on science, technology, and engineering and the tools that are important from there for societal responses. So it's a good opportunity and a good moment to be thinking about studying our MPAs. And we look forward to as many of you as possible joining us when we start our new academic year in September. So I'm going to hand over, Siobhan. I don't know if you've got any final thoughts, any final comments on the way forward from here.
I think that is a very good time for us to round things up. I just want to say thank you for everyone for joining us this afternoon, and thank you for the panel for taking the time to answer everyone's questions. If anyone does have any questions following this session, you are welcome to contact us at steep.admissions@ucl.ac.uk. And you can also follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn for more updates on what the department is up to. It's just a quick note that currently the deadline for applications is the 31st of March. So you have just around 8 weeks to submit applications. And I think with that, I will say thank you all for joining us and hope you all have a lovely afternoon. Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you all very much.